till her eye. I'm just trying to make sure I get everything in the shot. So, I went to the store today, and you won't believe what happened. I ran into Sarah from high school.
Oh, really?
We are thinking of going to the movies tonight.
No?
Oh, which one are you thinking about? The best part about this is the versatility and all the different attachments that you can put on it.
Yeah, I've got a busy week.
Oh, tell me about it. I think that's why this has been so popular, because it offers a lot of value.
So I was just playing this game and it's actually pretty cool.
The world
I was
of
so
Tieu Ca
surprised
did
when I
not
saw
return
him.
with
He had
peace.
changed so much
It
since the
returned with
last time.
silence so heavy it felt like a scream buried under her skin. She had given birth too soon, far too soon. And instead of the soft cry of a newborn pressed against her chest, there was only the sharp hum of hospital machines and the cold reflection of glass. Her child was alive, but hidden inside an incubator, wires clinging to fragile skin, breaths rising and falling with painful effort. The doctors spoke gently, yet every word was a blade, premature, fragile, 2 months. Each syllable struck her like thunder. She was told she could not hold the baby, could not kiss the baby, could not even touch the baby. She was told to wait. For a mother, waiting felt like torture. When she was discharged from the hospital, her father of the child walked beside her, carrying their few belongings. The rain tapped against the windows of the car that carried them toward Tieu Children's Hospital. Her body was weak, her steps unsteady, but her heart burned with a desperate fire. She needed to see her baby, even from a distance. She told herself that even one glance, even through glass, would be enough to keep her alive. But when they arrived, the truth crushed her. The doctors shook their heads. She could not go inside. The incubator was a sterile cage, a place where even a mother's love was forbidden to enter. She pressed her forehead to the cold glass, tears dripping down her cheeks, whispering words the baby could not hear. Her arms ached to hold. Her lips ached to kiss. Her heart ached to belong to the child she had carried. But all she had was distance. The hospital corridors were painted in white, but to her they looked like walls of ice. Every doctor's step echoed like a warning. Every beep of the machine behind the glass felt like the ticking of a clock she could not control. She stayed as long as she was allowed, her eyes locked on the fragile body inside. When the nurses told her to rest, she nodded, but inside she screamed. Leaving the hospital was like tearing her own soul in half. They rented a small hotel near the hospital. The walls were thin, the bed too hard, but she did not care. All she could think of was the baby inside that incubator. At night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her hands clutching the thin blanket, imagining her child's tiny fingers closing around hers. Sleep never came easily. When it did, it was filled with nightmares. She dreamed of alarms blaring, of glass shattering, of reaching out only to find emptiness. She woke with tears soaking her pillow. Her father of the child tried to comfort her. He cooked small meals, bought fruit, whispered that the baby was safe. Friends called, offering kind words, saying she was strong, saying she would get through this. She smiled when they spoke, But the moment they left, the silence closed around her again. No one understood that silence was the loudest sound of all. The doctors explained that the baby would need 2 months. 2 months before the lungs grew stronger. 2 months before the wires came off. 2 months before a mother's arms could replace glass. To anyone else, 2 months might seem short. But to Tieu Ca, 2 months was an ocean of pain. She marked the calendar, each day crossed with a black pen. Every mark was a wound. Every night was a battle. Her body healed slowly, but her heart did not. She pumped milk every day, her hands trembling as the machine hummed. Each drop that filled the bottle felt like hope, like proof that she was still connected to her baby. She whispered to the milk, "This is for you. This is my love." And though her tears often fell into the bottle, she refused to stop. When at last she returned home to rest, the house felt wrong. The crib stood empty. The tiny clothes she had folded with such care were untouched. She lifted one small shirt to her face, breathing in the faint smell of fabric, pretending it was her baby's scent. She whispered lullabies into the silence, her voice cracking, her tears endless. Every room was haunted by absence. Each day she moved through the house like a ghost. She cooked because she was told to eat. She walked because she was told to rest her legs. She lay in bed because her body demanded sleep. But inside she was hollow. Every thought returned to her baby. Every breath was a prayer. Every second apart was a blade cutting deeper into her soul. Yet through it all, one truth anchored her. She was a mother. She could not surrender. She would wait, no matter how cruel the time, no matter how sharp the pain. She whispered to the empty air, "My child, I will endure this storm. I will not break. I will be here when you are ready." And though the world outside moved on with its noise and color, inside the heart of Tieu Ca, there was only fire. A fire that no silence, no distance, no glass could extinguish. The days after returning home stretched endlessly. Every morning, Tieu Ca opened her eyes to silence. It was not the peaceful kind of silence, but the heavy kind that screamed louder than any cry. She forced herself to move, to eat, to breathe, but every action felt hollow. The crib stood untouched, a monument to absence. The tiny clothes she had folded with trembling hands remained in their place, waiting, mocking her with stillness. She would lift them, press the soft fabric to her face, and whisper, "Soon, my love, soon." But the air swallowed her words, and no answer ever came. Each day became a ritual of survival. She pumped milk with shaking hands. Her body was weak. Her eyes were swollen from nights of tears. The machine hummed, filling the quiet with a sound that seemed both mechanical and cruel. Every drop of milk was both hope and heartbreak. She told herself, "This is for you. This is proof that I will never give up." Yet the truth was sharp. Love without touch was agony. To give without holding, to prepare without delivering. It was like fate had stolen the very essence of being a mother. Nightfall was the cruelest enemy. The strength she carried during the day crumbled with darkness. She lay in bed, her mind replaying images of her baby struggling to breathe. Her dreams turned to nightmares. She saw hospital doors slamming shut. She saw faceless doctors pulling her away. She saw glass shattering, cutting her hands, leaving her with nothing. Every time, she woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, pillow wet with tears. She whispered into the dark, "Please survive. Please hold on." But silence answered her cries. The father of her child tried to protect her. He prepared meals. He spoke softly. He reminded her again and again that the doctors had said the baby was stable. Friends came with fruit, with gifts, with gentle words. They told her she was strong. They told her she would overcome this. She smiled for them. She nodded. She said thank you. But when the door closed and the house returned to stillness, she collapsed again. The silence became a predator, devouring her piece by piece. Often she sat by the window at night. She looked into the black sky. She whispered lullabies, as if the wind itself could carry her voice to the incubator. She knew it was madness, yet she clung to it. Madness was better than despair. At least in madness, she could believe her child heard her voice. At least in madness, she could believe love traveled through air and glass. The phone became her curse and her hope. Every time it rang, her body froze. Her hands trembled as she reached to answer. She feared the call that would end her world. The news was always the same. Stable, fragile, waiting. The words pierced her heart. Stable, but fragile. A cruel combination that gave hope with one hand and tore it away with the other. She marked the days on the calendar with thick black lines. Each line was like a wound. 60 days stretched before her like an impossible mountain. Every mark reminded her how far away her baby was. Sometimes anger took over. Rage poured out of her like fire. She screamed at the ceiling. She slammed her fists into pillows. She cursed fate for robbing her of the first embrace. She cursed her body for failing to carry the baby to term. She cursed herself for being powerless. But when the fury left, exhaustion returned. And still, the next morning, she rose again. Always she rose. Weakness was not an option. Not for Tieu Ca. She began to write letters. Letters her baby could not read. Dear little one, she wrote with shaky hands. You cannot hear me yet, but I am here. I breathe for you. I fight for you. I will never abandon you. Ink blurred with tears stained the pages. Each word was carved into her soul. She placed the journal beside the crib, as if one day the baby would read it and know her love had never faltered. The weight of being a single mother pressed down on her like iron chains. Yet those chains became fire in her blood. She told herself she had to be strong. Stronger than loneliness. Stronger than fear. She saw herself no longer as a victim of fate, but as a warrior. Her love was her weapon. Her patience was her shield. Every day survived was a battle won. Still, fear stalked her every moment. Infection, weakness, complications. The words haunted her like shadows, chasing her through dreams and thoughts. The idea that her child might slip away before she could even hold them clawed at her sanity. But then she remembered the tiny chest rising and falling inside the incubator. She remembered the fragile heartbeat that kept fighting. If her baby could fight, then she could fight too. So her fear turned to fire. Her despair turned to defiance. She no longer whispered weakly. She spoke with power. She shouted into the emptiness of her home. You will live. You will survive. You will come back to me. Her voice cracked. Her tears fell. But her resolve grew sharper than steel. 2 months stretched before her like a cruel sentence. But she was no longer just a mother waiting. She was a force of nature, unyielding and unbreakable. She swore that when the time came, when the incubator opened, she would claim her child with the strength of every sleepless night, every tear shed, every scream unleashed. The world would know that the love of Tieu Ca was a fire that no distance, no glass, no fate could extinguish. The final weeks of waiting bent reality itself into something cruel and distorted. For Tieu Ca, every second was a blade, every hour a storm, every day an endless battlefield where she fought against despair and clung desperately to the hope that her baby was still breathing behind the glass. Her body had grown thin, her hands pale, her eyes darkened with shadows from nights spent awake. But her spirit, though battered, burned hotter than ever. She marked the calendar each day with trembling hands, whispering, one less day, one step closer. And then at last, the phone call came. It was early morning, the light pale through the window, when the hospital called and asked her to come. The words made her blood turn cold. Her knees weakened. She clutched the table for support. The baby had reached the threshold. The baby was strong enough now to feel the warmth of a mother's touch, strong enough to be lifted out of the incubator, yet still fragile, still at risk. still walking the thin line between survival and loss. Joy and terror crashed together inside her chest, tearing her apart. She dressed with shaking hands, every movement clumsy, her breath shallow, her heart racing as if it might break through her ribs. On the road to the hospital, she stared out the window at the rain-slicked streets, watching raindrops race down the glass, each one like a tear sliding into oblivion. Her father of the child spoke, his voice gentle, urging her to stay calm, reminding her of the doctor's assurances. But she barely heard him. Her mind was consumed by a single thought. What if my arms are not enough? What if fate rips them away the moment I finally hold them? The hospital rose before her like a fortress of destiny, white walls gleaming under the gray sky, antiseptic air already heavy on her tongue. Her legs trembled as she walked through the corridors, each step echoing louder than the last, every beat of her heart a thunderclap in her chest. The doctor guided her forward, explaining procedures, warning of risks, but her ears only caught fragments. Fragile lungs, risk of infection, limited time. None of it mattered. Only one thing mattered. Her child. At last they reached the ward. Through the glass, she saw them. Her baby. Not just a shadow of life anymore, but a fragile warrior who had fought through 2 months of darkness. Tiny chest rising, falling, rising again with more strength than before. Wires still clung to delicate skin, but in those faint movements, she saw defiance. She saw survival. She saw the reflection of her own fight. Tears filled her eyes. Her breath caught in her throat. The room blurred around her until only that small figure remained in focus. Then, the barrier broke. The incubator opened with a soft mechanical hiss. A nurse, gentle yet firm, carefully lifted the child, wrapped them in a sterile blanket, and turned toward her. Tieu Ca's arms reached out instinctively, trembling as if she was holding the weight of the entire universe. And then, after 2 months of torture, 2 months of silence, 2 months of waiting and breaking and waiting again, the baby was placed in her embrace. Time shattered. The world stopped. The machines faded. The voices of the doctors disappeared. All that remained was warmth. Fragile, trembling, alive. The weight in her arms was light as air, yet heavier than everything she had ever carried. She felt the tiny heartbeat against her chest, a rhythm that echoed her own, a song of survival, a drumbeat of defiance against death itself. Her sobs erupted uncontrolled, tearing out of her chest, raw and desperate. Tears streamed down her face, falling onto her child's skin like raindrops, mixing with the soft warmth of new life. My child, you are here. You are mine, she whispered over and over, her voice cracking, her arms clutching as if she could shield the baby from every cruelty in the world. The baby stirred, lips parting, a faint whimper breaking the silence. That sound was no ordinary cry. It was the cry of life reclaimed, the cry of victory after endless nights of fear, the cry that shattered despair and rewrote fate. To her, it was the sweetest sound she had ever heard. The sound of a future, the sound of love given form. But joy was not without shadow. The doctors reminded her firmly, the child was still delicate. The next days were dangerous. Infection lurked like a predator. Complications were still possible. The fragile line between survival and loss had not yet vanished, but Tieu Ca's arms only tightened. Her tears turned from sorrow to fire. She pressed her lips to the child's forehead and whispered fiercely, "Nothing will take you from me. Not now. Not ever. I will fight the world itself if I must." Memories of every night of torment flooded her mind. The screams she swallowed in silence. The nightmares that ripped her from sleep. The endless pumping of milk with trembling hands. The whispers to an empty room. The black lines carved onto the calendar. All of it surged back, and now all of it poured into her embrace. She was no longer just a waiting mother. She was a warrior reborn. Her love was a shield stronger than steel. Her will a blade sharper than destiny itself. She rocked the baby gently, her voice trembling but strong as she told them stories of the world they would see together. Of mornings filled with sunlight, of nights filled with lullabies, of days filled with laughter. She promised them that no matter how cruel fate could be, her love would always be stronger. Outside the hospital, the storm raged. Rain lashed against the windows. Thunder rolled across the sky. It was as if the heavens themselves were watching, bearing witness to this moment of triumph carved from agony. When she finally stepped outside with her child cradled close, the rain stopped, the clouds broke. The air was fresh, sharp, alive. The world itself seemed different. The sky wider, the colors brighter, the ground steadier beneath her feet. She walked not as a woman broken by waiting, but as a force remade by fire. The 2 months of torment had not destroyed her. They had forged her into something unbreakable. A mother, a warrior, a survivor. She looked down at the tiny face nestled against her chest, felt the steady breath against her skin, and whispered, "We survived. We won. No force in this world will ever break us again." And in that whisper was not just relief, but defiance, not just victory, but promise. The story of Tieu Ca was no longer one of despair and waiting. It was a story of fire, of triumph, of love powerful enough to burn through glass, through silence, through fate itself. And as she walked away from the hospital, her baby in her arms, the future stretched before her, fragile but alive, uncertain but hers. For she knew now with unshakable certainty that love, when fierce enough, when desperate enough, when unbreakable enough, could defy even the cruelest hand of destiny.